Hey folks, this is Michele Allman, CEO and company cheerleader for Clear Digital Media. I am here today with Chris Erickson. We are talking about the patient experience and websites. So Chris, tell us a little bit about what you do. What's your background? Who are you?
Well, I've been in audiology for 20 years. Spent a lot of time running practices, working for manufacturers, but more recently, I work for Hearing Tracker. I do some SEO work. Many people have heard of me because I work with Dr. Cliff and the new Hearing Up network. I do a lot of their digital stuff, but mostly what I work on is Audflow. And Audflow is a company that helps practices build a better patient experience for their users. And we do that through websites. We do that through better organic visibility. And we also have some software and tools that we're creating to help people in the clinic as well.
Awesome. So much conversation now around the patient experience and the importance of the patient experience. And I think that more and more providers, more and more audiologists are starting to realize that that is such a critical component in this whole process, and that in this industry, psychology drives so much of our actions and our behaviors, and we cannot avoid that reality. And so the patient experience, I think, is such a fundamental component of driving positive outcomes, positive behaviors with patients. And at the end goal, I think we all want patients to see an outcome that includes amplification and hearing restoration through that process. So, what are some of the things that practices should really think about as far as their digital presence and that patient experience?
I think the number one thing is really just to stand out. Today there's this sort of fire hose of information that we're all given, whether it's Facebook or Google or the news, and just grabbing someone's attention for half of a second, I think, is so incredibly valuable. And the mistake what I see like most often is from the digital side, practices just looking like everybody else. And from the digital presence, you have a lot of websites where you could just change the logo, the colors, and they're basically the same. They say the same things. They show the same pictures. And so if you're a consumer and you're looking at all this craziness in the market, there's OTC regs, you've got people selling hearing aids online, you've got third parties, and you're wanting to stand out. I think a lot of people are not putting enough thought into how they can do that from a digital perspective, and the ways in which they can really make someone stop for just a minute and look, because that's the key. Everybody's surfing through information. We know that consumers are going and clicking through links, multiple links on search engine result pages. And so as they're clicking through those links, does what you have to offer as a practice owner and your website or your landing page, your social media, does it look that different from your competition? Will it make somebody stop for just a minute and take a look and listen? Yeah.
Boy, that's a really, really good point, because you're so right. Like, there's so many websites out there where you could just swap out the logo. Some of the stock photography is almost the same, And
oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, there are three guys that I think are on like 75% of the audiology websites. I think you're right. It's just, I think you're right. I hope these guys are rich. I really hope these guys are rich, because they are everywhere. It's the same three guys. And yeah, it just drives me crazy. So there's no, and we can talk about this, a little bit more later, but there's no like psychology behind showing someone a stock photo. It doesn't do anything to them, especially once someone has become desensitized to it by seeing it multiple times. There's no emotion there. It does nothing. So a lot of what we try to do is think about what happens to someone when they see or read a phrase or see an image or watch a video. So that's a lot of what we try to think about.
I mean, once someone's gotten to the website, so they've already been they've taken the steps. So they've hit a search, whatever
Mhm.
the process is that gets somebody to say, okay, I got to take a look. I really need to start to think about this. So they hit a website, and then, you know, they've stopped. But now what's next? Like, what happens in that process? What should providers be thinking about?
Well, I think the very first thing is, you know, I mean, it's kind of an old phrase, but you only have one chance to make a first impression,
Yeah.
and your brand impression is so important. You know,
Mm-hmm.
psychologists have found that your first impression for your brand can last months,
Yeah.
meaning it can drive the outcome of the hearing consultation, the fitting process. You know, of course, there are interactions that are important after that, but it's so critical to get that brand impression correct
Mm-hmm.
right away. And so
Yeah.
that's, you know, that's what I think people should, um, you know, should think about. Is this reflective of me?
Yeah.
Is this me and what we've discovered? As I talk to practice owners or people who run practices, they put so much thought into their process,
Mm-hmm.
the experience that the patients have. I mean, people are thinking about this stuff. It's just not always reflected in their website.
Yeah.
And so that's what I try to transition them to do. They've already, you know, the service side, they're already doing a great job. They have tons of, you know, raving fans and people who are leaving them wonderful reviews. They are thinking about the outcomes for the patients, and they care about the outcomes. These are the only people that we like to work with, people that care about outcomes.
Sure.
But it just doesn't always carry over to the website. Does that, when you land on your website, is that what you see right up front? Right up front.
Yeah, you know, you make a good point, and it's kind of like you got to back into the front side. So it's almost like, okay, we got the core. I operate with integrity and best practices. I am committed to positive outcomes for my patients. I'm about, you know, providing that bedside manner, so to speak, that experience with the patient where I'm engaging with them. I'm you know, let's face it, a lot of providers are providing counseling services, you know, because you've got an emotional decision that people are making, you know. They've come into an office, so you paid attention to your practice. You've treated it like it's you're welcoming patients into it. And now you get to the website, it's like you've backed into what is the core of who you are, but now does your website reflect all that great stuff? You know, and if it doesn't, then you're not showcasing all of that work that you put into this incredible experience on the front side. It's kind of like knowing that you're gorgeous, but you didn't brush your hair, you didn't put on clean clothes. You know what I mean? It's like that presentation really, really matters because it sets the stage moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, it's as if you went into a job interview and you wore the same exact thing as everybody else, right?
Yeah, right.
Or styled your hair the same way. How are they
Right.
going to remember you? Yeah. So I agree.
Well, what are some ways that people can go about getting started with that? Like, where do they start in thinking about how to change that first impression using the website?
The very first thing I talk about with everybody, which I think drives them nuts, because like a lot of people call me and they'll want to talk about their web presence. And unfortunately for them, for the victims that call me, I end up giving them homework. And one of the things is you have to have professional photography.
Yeah.
Today, in 2022 and beyond, it is an absolute requirement. We have to get rid of the stock photography. We have to show you right up front. Because once they see you, the provider, on the website, they feel like they know you.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's something about seeing people's faces. Like we had this discussion when COVID came out, we were all masked and, you know, and after a few months, nobody was seeing, you know, people's expressions and what does that do to us, like culturally as a society.
Yeah.
And of course it was necessary and all that, but it's just so important to see people's faces and connect with them. And if they see your face, they are so much more likely to pick up the phone, to fill out that form, or do whatever it is you're asking them to do on the website. And they can also picture themselves in your office. So if you have a picture of you looking in someone's ear, they can picture themselves as the patient. That's what we do. We sort of place ourselves in those photos. That's why photos are so powerful. So that's one thing that we talk to a lot of people about. Another thing is, one of my pet peeves is hiding reviews on a reviews page or a testimonials page.
Yeah.
And the reason is that, most of the analytics that I look at, people are hitting those reviews pages or testimonial pages less than 2% of the time. In fact, for one guy, he said, I don't believe that, and so he gave me access to his analytics and we looked and it was 0.4%. So, it was just, that means at most out of 100 people coming to your website, only half or one or two maybe are going to see your reviews. So we know social proof is important. Oh, yeah. Many practices have spent a lot of money or effort trying to get reviews over the last couple of years. Some of them are spending good money on these review software programs, which I believe in. I think they're important. But then to bury those reviews in that social proof or make that person try and search around for it, I think is a missed opportunity. So another thing that we talk to folks about is, what if the person didn't really have to scroll to see that people like you? Yeah. To see that like you have a lot of fans, whether it's you're showing reviews right up top, or you have an example review, or you show your Google review score right up top. Yeah. What if you just showed that right when people get there? Yeah. And therefore they don't have to search around. And I think it's quite powerful. And it's something that we don't do a paid advertising. We're not big believers in paid advertising, but it's something that people in paid advertising do because they know that it increases conversion to have that social proof right up top. So why not just have it for everybody? Yeah, for sure. So. Absolutely. So, having been, the internet now is such a big part of our lives. Like, can you even imagine life without the internet right now? Right. I kind of like to, actually. I'm old enough to remember life before the internet and life before cell phones, believe it or not, which is really sad. But back in the day, I can remember just conversation around SEO. What is SEO? How do you get ranked? And there was all the tricks and all the different things that you try to figure out. And it seems like it's just a constantly changing, evolving process. Tell us more about like SEO, Google search, and your thoughts on that, and what your advice might be. Yeah, I mean, I always talk to people about, think of your digital presence as a house, right? You wouldn't want to remodel the kitchen if your foundation is all messed up, right? And to me, your organic visibility, when someone Googles what you do in your area, can they find you? Are you visible? That is the base. And that is the number one place you should start. If that isn't right, you've got problems, and you are going to overspend to try to correct that problem, possibly into perpetuity if you never fix it. So so if there's an issue there, you have to fix it, and that's really what we focus on, because we know that people most of the time scroll past the ads. Ads for many businesses are not a profitable venture. They can be in terms of Google ads, but it depends on your market, your competition, and all that. Organic visibility is much more predictable and longer term. So, one of the things, there are a couple of things I think that practices can do to think about that, because hey, you can't give someone a great patient experience if they never become your patient, right? Right, exactly. So a couple of things that I think are missing right now, particularly in audiology and the SEO space. One is performance. Google wants page speed to be quick. It's now part of their ranking algorithm to, give preference to sites that are are speedier than their competition.
Yeah.
Now, there are a lot of different factors in SEO, so this certainly isn't the only one, but page speed and performance is very important. And Google has its own tool you can use to measure your website. It's called Google Page Speed Insights. And so you can measure, and they give you a score out of 100. The only measurement that matters, in my opinion, is the mobile measurement. And most audiology practices get 30 out of 100 on Google's own score. In fact, I've seen some brand new websites recently that have been built last few months that were under 5.
Whoa.
1, 2, 3. So just incredibly slow websites. And what happens is, if Google is trying to decide whether to serve your website, there's a competitor's website, and things are fairly equal.
Yeah.
And theirs has a better page performance, they're gonna outrank you in most of these queries.
Okay.
So it's really important. And unfortunately, a lot of websites now are not up to speed, so to speak, on that. And so I think that's incredibly important. The other thing is, just like audiology best practices, we hear about this recently, especially with me, working with the whole Dr. Cliff thing and Hearing Up is, you have audiology best practices. Well, we have SEO best practices.
Yeah.
And there are some key ones that most audiology websites don't have. I've talked about this decent amount on my LinkedIn and on Facebook. One of them is what we call schema, or schema markup, which is a markup language that is not for humans. It's not seen on the website, right? But it communicates directly to the search engines about what a page or a website is about. There's all different types of schema markup. But the most basic one is your local business schema. And it's been SEO best practice for probably 3 or 4 years. In most industries, these websites all have it.
Yeah.
In audiology, for whatever reason, people aren't doing it. And so there are just some really key things that are being missed, because I think, sometimes people aren't thinking about that or taking the time to make sure these things are quite right. So those are a couple of things from, just like the SEO and organic visibility standpoint. But I do think it's incredibly important.
Yeah. And, you make it's intriguing, because it just made me think about why would other industries be all over this and audiology be a little bit behind it? And I think sometimes it's because there's a lot of resources actually within audiology, where you have different groups where you can be like, I want that package. And it's a little cookie cutter. So on the outside, it's kind of like, and this may be a little, it's not meant to be insulting, but it's like the lipstick on the pig kind of thing. It's like, that's very cookie cutter. It's very simple. It's very easy to execute. It looks pretty. It's good enough. So it's ironic. And it's something that I talk about all the time, is that it's very ironic. The very things that keep patients from taking action, right, moving forward, is it's not, my hearing's good enough. It's not that bad. I'll be fine. I don't need to worry about that right now, are the very same psychology roadblocks that keep us as providers from doing the things we need to do to have better outcomes. That includes the not so sexy parts of the SEO and schema language and those things that we don't really, we're like, it's good enough. It's fine. It looks good. We're cool. The way your practice looks on the inside, the way, the best practices that you deploy to create the great outcomes. It's very interesting, and there's a little irony in that. And it's something just to be aware of, because we're all consumers, period, of all kinds of things, and keeping in mind those same things that keep us from moving forward are the same things that keep our patients from moving forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, our industry is weird. I think anybody
love
who's
you
been
industry,
in audiology,
but you are weird.
it's weird. And there are all these, what I call golf course deals, right? A manufacturer comes by and says, hey, you should do business with X, you should do business with Y, you should do business with Z. It could be marketing, it could be really anything. And sometimes X, Y, and Z are not the right choice for you.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, but someone told someone to tell their accounts, recommend this, and so I do think there's been some bad information that's been passed around. But also, look, I mean, I think any small business, whether you're an audiologist or a plumber, or an electrician, you got good at, you went to school for audiology because you cared about the hearing part, or you got good at working on plumbing because you enjoyed that. You enjoyed working with your hands. You didn't get into that to have to get bogged down with all this digital stuff. And then it's sort of, as you mentioned, I think it was, one of your comments a few minutes ago, the whole digital thing has just kind of taken over our lives. Yeah. It's just gotten to the point where it's unavoidable. I think people have to not just check the box on the digital side, and they really have to get invested. And it doesn't mean a money thing. It's mostly just a time thing, and learning about it and trying to become as educated as possible about what's happening, because it can have a huge impact. And I think going forward, I think it will have even more of an impact on a success of a practice, because our market is going to continue to change. I don't see the death of audiology. I think many practices are going to do very, very well. I do think this will separate people, businesses, the better ones from the more average ones or lower than average. And so I think, thinking about our first impressions, thinking about standing out, thinking about getting people's attention, and with everything that's going to be changing, I think is going to be even more important in the next 5 years than it has been in the last 5 years.
I agree with you 100%. And I think to kind of wrap it up, to think about the idea that there is the right fit for everyone. And I think that a lot of times, and it's a human nature thing where we tend to go the route of like, if it's not the way I think, then it's not right. But the truth of the matter is that there is a fit. And I just did a presentation, we're talking about patient personas and creating personas, and understanding that there's some patients that want relationships with this, and there's some patients that want relationships with this. Know who your patient is, know who you are, commit to best practices. If that's who you are. And then, with the things that aren't your school of education, but you have the resources to find those best practice partners, that's the magic, and it's all out there. It's all available. It's just really, like you said, don't just check the box, take a little bit of time to vet it out. And then of course, looking at things like what we're doing here and sharing this information and trying to make it a little bit easier for people to find their way in that, which ultimately helps the patient. And that's the end goal. So.
Absolutely. 100%. And, for us, one of the coolest things about where I'm at, I said in the beginning, I've been doing this 20 years. One of the coolest things about where I'm at today is the people that I work with, Hearing Tracker and Abram, Dr. Cliff and Ashley with Hearing Up, the clients that we have with OddFlow, they all care about the outcome. Yeah. Like they really care. Yeah. And none of us are perfect. We make mistakes. I make mistakes. But I really care about the work I put out. Yeah. And I work with people that care about the work they put out. And it's just a really good feeling to be in a community of people that really cares, and we're all trying to do the best we can, and we're all trying to better ourselves. Yeah. And so I said this was a crazy industry or a weird industry, but I really do enjoy it, and that's one of the things I really enjoy about being in the sort of niche that we're in right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great way to wrap, and that it's about the commitment. It's about caring about your clients and caring about the outcome for the patient, and that the fruits of that are evidenced in the outcomes, and that's really cool. So for a crazy, weird industry, it's a crazy, weird industry full of a lot of really good people who care deeply about the patient outcome, and, you know, giving them the tools that help to build that and take away the stress of knowing is really cool. So
yeah.
well, it's great talking to you today, and thank
Yeah,
you
you
for
too.
sharing. I think that'll be super helpful for so many people. And
Yeah, hopefully it was. Yeah.
yeah, good deal. If someone wanted to reach out and find more information about Erickson Built, or the, you know, your resources, where would they go?
Mhm. Yeah, I would just say, you know, I work with oddflow.com. We work individually with practices. For those, I also work with hearingup.com. So for those who are looking to, you know, join Dr. Cliff's network, you know, that's a good resource as well. So, you know, either one of those websites. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm not that big into social media. I'm one of these old school guys who, even though I work on the digital side, I fight it a little bit, you know, in terms of that. I'm not that great at doing all the social media stuff, but you can always find me on LinkedIn, and I'm very responsive on all that stuff. So
Great. Awesome. Well, thanks, Chris.
yeah, thank you. Really appreciate
All
it.
right. All right. See you later.